Good evening. Welcome to the September 23rd meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. I don't know, it's the first day of fall. It's already getting close to the end of September. I don't know where this year has gone, but we better get our meeting underway in any case.
Before we lose the rest of the year.
Yeah, before all of a sudden, if I dawdle around for 5 minutes, it'll be October. First item on our agenda is public input. If there's anyone here from the public who wishes to speak or bring the board's attention to something that is not already on the agenda for tonight, now would be the opportunity. Seeing none, we'll move on to our action items. Our first action item is an approval not required plan at 33 Wesson Street.
Okay, so on the board, or in front of the board and on the screens is a 2-lot approval not required plan off of Wesson Street. You'll see, and let me just mark this up a little bit.
Viewed like that, I found it very difficult to understand. Once I put it on my desktop and blew it up about 6 times, I was able to tell the difference between solid lines
Yeah.
and stone walls, and it became clearer.
Isn't it? Okay. Okay, so you have Wesson Street on the right side. You have frontage that is along here for lot 2-1, frontage of 141 feet. That lot basically ends up being this sort of right angle shaped lot.
Can you draw? I can't see.
It's like asking me, well, now please install. Okay, there we go. Okay. So this lot is right here.
Show the whole, outline the frontage,
Frontage is right here.
just that.
Just that. So that's for this lot 2-1. And I have to scoot this down a little bit, actually, maybe zoom out a little bit. Okay, now let's try that again. The second lot, this one right here, 2-2, is claiming its frontage right here, 265 feet. However, this is labeled, and I know it's small, so you're going to have to trust me with what I'm reading. It says Old Road right here, down at the bottom of the plan. And you should have, do they have, oh, they're right here.
No. That'll help a lot.
If you want to take one, pass it down, you can open it up to see in a little bit better detail. This is also sort of referred to by people as Old Wheelock. However, for an A&R, approval not required, as the board may recall, there's
1 month.
3 things that we're really concerned with for A&R plans. The first one, does it have the required frontage? So, lot 2 does have 265, so that is in excess of the 140 feet that's required. Second, is it on a public maintained road? Well, Old Wheelock is not maintained by the town. The third thing is it accessible through the frontage? That is also something that it is not very accessible. I mean, if you had a 4-wheeler, you probably could. But for the purpose of A&R, it doesn't meet the 3 things that we're looking for, having really only one. So you may have noticed in the packet for this agenda item, I had a copy of an email exchange with the surveyor. The first thing, because I had been dealing with this property for a while, was, and in past requests, and the board may recall about 2.5, 3 years ago, we had someone proposing a subdivision coming in off of this portion, improving Old Wheelock and then coming in. However, it required waivers of maximum length of dead-end street and all of those things. So some of the history as far as Old Wheelock and its status were started to be examined. However, for this A&R, the surveyor did not prepare any sort of documentation or certification identifying lot 2-2 has any sort of legal status as a buildable lot. So in that email that's included in the packet, I basically had said, I'm in receipt of an A&R plan on Weston Street. Lot 2-2 appears to get its frontage from what is being called Old Road. Since the plan does not have a note stating Lot 2-2 is not a buildable lot, and since the Old Road is not an accepted road, can you provide documentation supporting the creation of Lot 2-2 as a buildable lot, creation as a buildable lot is valid? Basically, the response was, I cannot, and he recommends taking a Sharpie and a note that it's not a buildable lot. I myself in past municipalities have had instances where the board has determined that it's not a buildable lot. The board is able to inscribe things on it, and that gets recorded. The applicant can always not record if they didn't agree it, but the A&R does have the notation saying compliance endorsement does not certify compliance with the zoning bylaw. That is definitely the case in this instance. But I would, so that's down here in the corner. But I would basically take up the surveyor's recommendation and recommend handwriting under lot 2-2 that it's not a buildable lot. If the board was to say not to want to do that, I mean, one, it could say the application is not compliant, but it's compliant from what is required for submission. It's a compliance issue as far as the status. So I think it's entirely appropriate to write a note on it that it's not considered a buildable lot.
Well, had the plan been submitted to us with that notation already on there,
Yeah,
that would be covered.
Right.
So,
right.
however that notation gets to be on there,
Right. He's not, I mean, he wasn't going to charge the people like another $150 to reprint a Mylar when we can basically take Sharpie to it.
So what,
Really, I really don't like us having to do that. It worries me. I think that the notation would have to be written on all our paper copies too, just in case they got to someone.
Oh, absolutely.
My preference is to say it doesn't meet subdivision approval is not required because the plan that doesn't satisfy the requirements as drawn. He's showing two presumably compliant lots. No.
so what he's really looking for is just the one lot.
It-
Or he's
That's the only one that has, I mean, that's why I asked for clarification as far as did he examine the status of Old Road? And his recommendation was, no, I did not, just label it as non-buildable lot.
Well, so they were trying to get the two lots, if nobody said anything.
We've already, this land, we've already had past conversations with the property owners that in order for a back lot to be created, you need to actually go through the subdivision process in order to upgrade Old Road to town standards.
Well, does the owner even have control of the right-of-way of Old Road?
That is one of the things that we had recommended, that they retain a land use attorney to identify what the process would be to do that.
And also, on the town GIS, it appeared to me that what's laid out as the space that road is on isn't 50 feet wide in some areas, meaning turning it into a road would be difficult, and of course, there's still the problem of a dead-end road.
Correct. But that's where the request before us is
Yeah. All right.
for approval not required. There's looking at the submission requirements. The submission requirements are very succinct. They show wetlands on the property. They show the frontage, they show the adjacent ways, they show the locus plan. There's nothing from a content perspective to say, just your plan is denied because of lack of meeting submission requirements.
No, it's denied because it shows, it shows a situation that requires a subdivision.
But for here, zoning compliance doesn't, isn't tied to the plan. So we're putting a notation, like I've in the past written for the planning board.
Yeah,
In other towns, like a shed is on a new line that's created saying shed to be raised because it creates a zoning violation. That zoning violation doesn't matter. Only when the A&R plan is recorded, then enforcement occurs. So on this, it basically is a purview of the board. The board can either take the recommendation of the surveyor who prepared the plan saying just write a hand note, or the board could deem the application as incomplete, requiring notation. Any vote to not endorse because approval not required means, is it a subdivision or is it not a subdivision?
Seems to me that the email from the surveyor expresses the intent that lot 2-2 be labeled not a buildable lot.
now that it's been raised.
Excuse me, I'm the property owner, I'm here, if you have questions, I'm very happy to answer.
Please do come up to, either standing or sitting, whichever you're more comfortable with.
I'm very-
Either one of the, no, but you have to either use the microphone so the
Either
audience can
this
hear you.
microphone or that microphone.
Yeah,
I like my own seat.
Yeah, but we can't hear you and the folks at home can't hear you.
Okay.
so we
My
appreciate
name is
that.
Debbie Carlson. I am one of the owners of the property in question. It is not our intent to have Lot 2-2 as a buildable lot. That was never our intent. Basically, what we are doing here is we had 10.57 acres. We've gone through many avenues in an attempt to sell the land, okay? It's been in my family for, 40 years, something like that. Because of Old Wheelock Road and all the history with that road, it's been determined over the years that we have one buildable lot. To find one person who wants to build one house on 10.57 acres is looking for a needle in a haystack, and we have tried. Okay, so our thought process was to take some frontage on Weston Street, where we would have an A&R buildable lot, okay? We have the additional 7.686 acres behind it. If somebody wished to purchase that and have all 10.57 acres, that would be wonderful. It would be a separate transaction. Otherwise, we would probably approach the Grafton Land Conservancy because that does abut the Lambert Trust property, but it was never our intent for that to become a buildable lot.
Okay, so so your surveyor just left off a note that he should have put on here, and it wouldn't have been any question. Okay,
Yeah,
Does
so it
that
seems
help?
to me that the clear intent is for lot 2-2 to be not a buildable lot.
Yep.
And if it works for the board to write that on the plans and then endorse them,
I'll just echo one thing Rob said. To me, is that as a matter of course, I'm not really that comfortable with having us mark up any plans that didn't come to us that way, just because it's something. It's harder to, from my standpoint, say, well, this note is written differently in this plan versus that plan. Was this actually meant to
So
be there?
just so you know, it's not like we're recalculating frontage or area.
Yeah.
This is specifically about whether or not it's buildable or not. The planning board has all the authority. Whether you choose to exert it or not is your own decision.
well, I think I'd move that we find the plan with the notation we have discussed does not require subdivision approval, and I authorize the planner to make the appropriate inscriptions and sign.
Second.
Great.
One
Moved and
quick
seconded.
question.
Discussion.
Now, will Mylars be signed on, will Mylars come through for this to you? Is there?
We already have the Mylar out
Oh,
back.
you already have
Yeah.
it. Okay, so it can't be changed. It would have to have it on it in a Sharpie too.
Correct. I mean,
it.
basically, if I had rejected it, unfortunately, they probably would have got a bill for about $150 to $200 to reprint the Mylar, which is not necessary.
Okay.
You know, if the intent is clear and us marking it up to make that intent explicit on the Mylar and the paper copies, then
That's the best we can do. Okay.
trying to keep it as simple as we can.
Yep.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, and thank you for being here to clarify that.
Thank you. So we're all set?
Yeah, so what I'll be doing is I'll be signing that tonight, since I won't be in tomorrow. You can come to the counter and Natalia can give you that copy, so you can then take it to the next step. Okay?
Thank you very much, yes.
Thank you.
Sort of got it. Because we travel the whole country. We still have AAA maps.
Okey dokey. Our next action item is a request for determination of minor modification number 1 of special permit SP 2018-8 and site plan approval solar development phase 3. This is to add a gravel drive, shelter, concrete pad, and fenced-in paddock at 44 Estabrook. And we also have a couple of
Right.
hearings on this or neighboring property.
So I mean, we have the original request for determination. We did write the legal ad in case the board did not support this request to then allow it to be considered as part of a modification. As you may recall, we had originally received this request in the board. It was even on the agenda a couple meetings back, but because we had the 1-year extension, which is the subsequent public hearing, decided to hold this off so that the applicant and their engineer didn't have to come out multiple times. Because also, if the board then denied it as minor, we'd have to advertise anyways. So realistically, I'd sort of say let's hold off on this until we start the public hearings, and in the remaining 10 minutes, sort of take care of some of the other stuff.
Yes, since this particular request actually is part of pretty much is part of the public hearing.
I think it would confuse the later thing if we did something now on this.
Correct.
Yes, so let's just, we'll fold this item into the public hearing on the property. And moving on, we have on the agenda a discussion item for deliberation on Brigati Village.
Correct. So it was my intention when I was in Wednesday and Thursday to be able to today start preparing sort of like a skeleton as far as some of the things we need to discuss. Being out most of last week, this morning blew up on me, and there was more prominent fires. They're all fires. This is a fire. But it's a smoldering fire, and it's not threatening homes. There's other ones that sort of dragged my attention away, so I wasn't able to get back to start to put that together. And for the next meeting, which will be in 2 weeks, I will be able to, because we do have a clock that we are staff is cognizant of. We have 65 days to file a decision with the town clerk since the close of the public hearing.
When do we have to file the,
35 more days.
so we're beginning to
Yep.
squeeze it down?
We're starting to,
Because
so.
you were talking about having discussion and then starting to, or
Correct.
take some action.
So,
and more
like, the
discussion.
next meeting is going to be a substantial discussion on it.
Yeah, we will probably want to try to get this largely worked out by the end of the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And, you know, we'll see how we go if we have to look to see if there's an opportunity to, depending on where we are, if we had to throw in something else like meeting just before town meeting or something.
Yeah, 'cause our next meeting is October 7th, correct?
Correct,
And the meeting
And
after
then
that
after that
would be
is
the
the-
28th,
correct.
And is
because in between comes Columbus Day and town meeting.
is the 28th still within the?
It's
30?
still within the timeframe. But,
Not by much.
no, it's not by much,
Not by
but,
much,
but
and
then
you'll
we
be
start running
missing-
into an issue with Dave,
You'll be missing one vote.
so.
So,
Yeah, at that point, are we down to 4?
I'll look, I have the spreadsheet as
let's-
far as who is eligible. I believe since we,
Re-ed.
started, I'd have to double check to see as far as, whether, Vikram was eligible.
yep, and it may be that we will need to schedule a meeting that would not normally be on our schedule in order to
Right.
make sure we get that done on
Yep.
time.
Yep.
All right,
I
that's-
think there's a good chance that the 5 votes could be a critical factor.
Mhm.
Rather than 4.
Yep, so this becomes something that we absolutely positively must be able to work on significantly at our next meeting.
Wonder if we should have a special meeting before sooner rather than.
Depends on what his availability is.
Depends on how much work staff can do to prepare for it. Like 1 week from tonight, for example. That's
Well,
1
let's
week.
just say because of later on in the agenda, not only having continuances, but then also application being withdrawn, time that was going to be dealt with allocating for those frees up to then provide more focused time on this.
I might guess that it'd be pushing it to ask staff to have something pulled together well enough for us to have some substantive discussion, say, a week from today.
Can we have a meeting? With the cable committee, I've been going through this business when it's a holiday. You can't have a meeting, even if it's Columbus Day.
No U.S. holiday the 30th. There's no holiday on the 30th.
My calendar says,
30th,
no, on the 28th.
28th, there's no holiday.
No, what he's,
Oh.
what Justin's saying is as far as next
No, September.
Next Monday.
30th. September 30th, I have Rosh Hashanah. Now, whether that counts or not, I don't know.
It counts.
Well,
Missed that.
I'm not sure that they're right about a holiday other than like a national,
So.
formal national holiday should preclude having a
So,
meeting, but
so remember that Mullen applies during when the hearing's open. If someone can't make a meeting during deliberations but is present for the final vote, they still remain eligible because all the testimony is
Oh.
gone, is done.
that's
and
right.
over.
Yeah.
Well, the argument that I got from people who work in this building, who are on the cable committee, said, the town clerk had said, if it's a holiday, you can't have a public meeting. It's not necessarily a hearing, you can't have a public meeting. I don't think that's necessarily correct.
I think it's-
My understanding is holidays is when town hall is closed and there's no business that day.
Right, but they're not close to
But
Rosh
is
Hashanah.
that because you can't have a meeting in town hall? The case, my case, we could meet down at the new studio for cable. And that could be open, so that's even a,
Yeah.
anyway,
So that becomes,
all the other Mondays between now and November are taken. Why not this one too?
yes. Other than the fact that the 30th is Rosh Hashanah, which for some folks is a holiday. My grandchildren have the day off from school. In Franklin, they get that day off from school.
Well, it's next to Yom Kippur.
But that's maybe a question to look into, but again, it would be useful for us to meet then for Brigade Village only if staff can get some substantial work.
Well, that's where
completed
this
between
week
now
is
and
going to
then.
be focused on that. because, you know, the, that's the most legally pressing out of anything else.
If you're
So-
ready to do it, I think we could
Yeah.
do September 30th.
What's that?
If he's willing to do it, if, you know, if
I,
staff's ready to.
considering that we're gonna, that my meeting might not go all that long, but I think we need to have some conversation.
Yes,
Yeah.
right, if we can have some constructive conversation a week
Yeah.
from
Yep.
tonight on that topic, then that would be.
Because it's going to come down to the waivers and the findings, making sure that we're nailed down on those. Because that's going to dictate the rest of the direction.
Okay, I'm good with that. Do we have to propose that, or do we have to vote it?
Move that we have a special meeting on next Monday
7
at
o'clock?
7:00 here.
Okay.
And you'll have
This room, if available.
Well, if this room's not available,
If-
there are
yeah.
other rooms.
yeah.
Okay. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded that we schedule a meeting for Monday, September 30th, 7:00 to
Deal with one item.
deliberate on the Brigade Village decision. Further discussion?
A question, can we bring children here? I'll be a single dad that night, so can I get my
I don't
son
think it'd
here?
be a pro-
You can give him an iPad and go for it.
Drop at my.
Because I might have one of mine.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask my daughter.
It has happened
if she'll
before
come
in
along.
some of my committees, so.
Yes.
I noticed recently, Ed Prisby bringing children into, I think it was a selectmen's meeting.
Yep.
I know Peter brought his children in one time.
Yes.
And there's nothing like deliberation on residential development to just put those kids to sleep.
Yes. Yeah, that could be good. All right, further discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. We will take up Brigade Village a week from tonight for those parties who are interested.
Okay, that's,
All righty.
Okay.
It is 7:29.
So
I will proceed to at least one item of general business, bills, which have been circulated, I believe, and signed. And the clock still says 7:29. Minutes of previous meetings, I do not believe we have any for review
Now it's at
tonight.
7:30.
So that, we've knocked off two of our general business items,
There we
and the
go.
clock does now read 7:30.
Did you say minutes was knocked off?
So as
Yeah.
as I mentioned, if the board would entertain taking 25 Grafton Common first, so that we can dial them in. The applicant is eagerly waiting our call. I'm gonna have Bill, once I give the A-OK, he's gonna dial it. We're gonna hear the dial and Mr. Hunter pick up, and then I can make an announcement that you are now live with the planning board, and we're gonna read in the public hearing notice
Do you know where is he?
in Florida.
Oh, okay.
oh,
Hey, it felt like Florida today.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it's probably just about as warm here as it was in Florida. So, yes, if the board's agreeable, then let's proceed with that one. And
okay, Bill, sir.
it's a 10 pulse per second dialing rate. Phone system is capable of interpreting 20 pulses per second.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Hunter. This is Joe Layton, town planner in Grafton, and you are live at the planning board's meeting tonight. We're gonna just dive right in, and I'll have the clerk read in the public hearing, and then after that, if you can describe what you are requesting for the board.
All right. The Grafton.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
The Grafton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, September 23rd, 2019, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A at the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider an application pursuant to Section 4.4.4 of the Grafton zoning bylaw for a special permit for sign relief relating to 1 square footage of a wall-mounted sign over a sidewalk sign for Hunter's Grill and Tap at the Grafton Inn located at 25 Grafton Common, shown as Grafton Assessors Map 74, Lot 80.0. Said property is located in the Neighborhood Business Zoning District. The applicant owner is James Hunter, JJH Investments Incorporated. Copies of the application are available for public inspection at the Planning Department Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., or on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov at the Planning Department Development Projects webpage.
Okay. Mr. Hunter, if you could just sort of briefly go over what you are looking to do as far as that sign.
Sure. So I do appreciate you guys, the board accommodating me for the. Obviously, I'm not available to be at the meeting. I do have 2 signs that I propose. One is on the front right corner of the building. The other is in the back left corner of the building. They are 3-foot by 5-foot signs, less than 15 square. So it's not an actual 3-foot by 5-foot. It's probably like 14 point, I think 4 foot square signs adjacent to the library. That's really all it is. It'd be at least 8 feet off the ground. It's already been approved by the Historic Commission. Let me know your thoughts.
So, what I have on the screen for the board, and I'll get into. Bob had emailed me some questions over the last day that I was responding to this afternoon. In this Google Street View picture of the Grafton and Hunter's Grill and Tap, you see the existing sign that is by the rear entrance. What is being proposed is to have a sign that would be, and let me just draw on it, in this location, extending out. So that you have 2 similar signs.
Right.
The reason for this application isn't because of the existing of the 2 signs. The application is that there's a sidewalk right here. This sign is above that sidewalk. We have section 4.4.3.4.4. I love this section of the bylaw. It's just so fun to read. That basically says a projecting sign when it is over a sidewalk is limited to 6 square feet in area. This is 13.75 square feet. So you're looking at an increase. When Jay Botberger, building inspector, myself met, first thing we did was try to identify what the total signage was allowed. So looking at the front of Grafton, the Grafton Inn, you have 52 feet. Because there's multiple tenants here, 1.25 square feet of area per linear feet. That ends up with 65 square feet of signage that's permitted. The sign bylaw also allows for that to be divided on a secondary wall that has an entrance. Hence, this facade that's on Upton Street. So you have the existing 3x5 Grafton Inn sign that's up top, which is not changing in dimensions, though Mr. Hunter did receive approval from the Historic District Commission to redo that sign to the same dimensions, changing the lettering with black and gold and sort of updating it compared to the existing.
You're talking about the one on the front of the building?
On the front of the building, exactly. These 2 signs, so you have the 15 plus the 13.75 and 13.75, you're still under the 65 that would be permitted by right under the zoning bylaw. And there comes in that 4.4.3.4.4 section that limits it to 6 square feet in area. That's why the application is in front of the board. As Mr. Hunter had identified, all the signs, including, it's not shown in the picture and it's not before the board, The Historic District Commission approved the sign for the Grafton Inn, these two signs, as well as a sign for a barber shop that is in retail space towards the rear end of the inn. That has a barber pole exactly and a sign there. Those at least just needed a sign permit through the building department. So,
The barber pole is on the outside.
yep,
Somewhere near, I can't remember where, but somewhere near where the rear sign we're talking about is.
it would be in this area.
Oh,
right here.
okay. And as far as I know, the identifying sign is in the window, isn't it? There's a illuminated sign in the window.
There's a sign right on top.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
And that's still all within,
Correct. So because this is then their entrance, so it's yet another calculation where for Bob's purposes, for that sign, it's along here. So it's a much smaller amount, granted. If you looked at this, the linear, the length of the Upton Street side, amount of signage would be much larger, but the barber shop has a very modest wall sign as well as the barber pole. So, Bob, you had asked, well, because in the picture that was submitted in the application, this older sign here was actually sort of leaning against the inn. That was just this exact sign here to be replaced with that new design that was here. They identify in their material from grade 8 feet to then at least be up and out from being a hazard because it would be over a sidewalk. Dimensions end up being as far as the same up front as it would be towards the rear end of the facade on Upton Street, but because that's over landscaping, we don't have that similar challenge. So
No.
that's the reason why this is in front of the board to request increasing from 6 to 13.75 square feet in area.
the size of the newly proposed signs
Match the old one.
match that one we just saw.
Correct.
The one other.
And,
No.
gentlemen, may I interject for a little bit?
Yes.
So there is the rear sign adjacent to the library is over green space. So that is, that will not encumber the sidewalk. However, the front one will stick out a little bit towards the sidewalk. However, it will be 8 feet above the sidewalk, and there's a current sign there. And you know what? I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what it is. It's a Grafton Town sign, but it is only 6 feet 10 inches above the sidewalk. So it is lower than the sign I'm proposing. My sign would be 8 inches. I'm sorry, 8 feet above the sidewalk, minimum,
Yep.
possibly 8.5.
The materials we saw said something about the sign being mounted on a metal pole that seemed to reach to the ground. And I was wondering about that. I think the current sign is just hung on the wall.
Yes, we do have to do aluminum and metal, and it's going to be painted. It's going to be white to match the trim on the corner boards of the inn. The sign itself will be black background with the green and gold lettering and the gold trim, and the parts that hang the sign or support the sign, they will be black to match the sign itself. Very tasteful.
Just one other thing for me. Have we dealt with the question of the portable sign that used to be put out in the sidewalk area?
So that was that was before I bought the place. I haven't used that sign in over a year because one thing, I think it's very tacky. It's ghetto and it's not something I would actually use myself. It did serve a purpose. However, to be honest, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I think it cheapens the town. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do a couple of signs that say, "Hey, we're a restaurant. Come, we have business." I brought business in. We have Emily and Kevin across the street with Quite Fetching. They started in the bar shop that he is in now. So I'm trying to bring business into the town. I'm not trying to cheapen the common or make it look anything. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
Different or
Right. And I think we appreciate that. That sign that used to be out there used to be an irritation for me. I don't believe it was permitted, and it was in the
Nope,
it
it
was in the
wasn't.
sidewalk or the right of way, which created a hazard that
right.
really.
And it's what I inherited. I've been there almost 4 years now. I have done my best to bring up the niceness, the aesthetics of the inn. Obviously, you guys have all known the improvements that I put into the inn. I mean, almost $200,000 I spent on all 3 floors. I'm not about making it, cheapening it. So
Well, I've got my question.
I'm just trying to get, I got two signs, 15 square feet in total area, well secured to the building, and in the front of the building, that sign was there a long time ago. That was there in the 40s and 30s and 40s and 50s. So it's nothing new. It was there. It should have been grandfathered. However, the previous owner or owners didn't keep it up.
Which sign?
I still have people coming into the inn and saying, "Hey, I didn't even know you guys were a restaurant. I didn't know you were an inn. I just want, a couple signs to say we're here." The current laws only propose a 6 square foot sign, which when you're driving at 30 to 50 miles an hour, you cannot see. You're just not going to pick it up. The average human isn't going to pick that up. So I need a 15 square foot sign, which isn't a lot, 3 foot by 5 foot, 8 feet above the ground, and that's what I'm asking for. The Historic Commission looked at it. They said everything's okay. We'll allow it. They wanted wood, and then my guy John Lyons Signs, professional sign developer, said can't do wood. It's just going to deteriorate, and it's going to look, it's not going to hold up and stand up to the elements in a year or two. So,
So I think just going back to why this is in front of the board at all, it is, as I understand what Joe had related at the beginning here, it's the square footage of the sign that projects over the sidewalk,
Correct.
which the zoning bylaw
Yep.
limits to 6 square feet. We're proposing a larger sign, and if I understand you correct, Jay, the reason why you are proposing the sign at the size you are proposing it at the at the front corner there nearest to the common is number one, for consistency with the existing sign at the corner across from the library. Number two, just for visibility, because a 6 square foot sign would be pretty small and harder for people to read, and having the sign at the corner by the common makes Hunter's Grill and Tap more visible to people, driving around the common, in particular coming
right.
up.
Are both signs going to say the same thing?
Exactly the same.
Okay.
Front and back. You can have 4 sides per sign. And I also proposed, I believe this was to Paul Berger, Mr. Berger, that, or it might have been Joe, I'm not sure, but, the Grafton Inn sign that's hanging on the front facade, between the second and third floor that's been there forever, well, as far as I know. If you, I will do that in the gold trim with the black back, black base to coincide with every other business on the common. I'm fine with that. These signs were made to blend in with every existing sign on the common. That's my goal. My goal is to work with Grafton, making that common a beautiful place to come and enjoy it, and he looks at it, So I don't want any neon, Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light, whatever you want to call it. I don't want any of those signs in my window. That's not what we're about. We're about having a classy place for folks to come and enjoy themselves.
And this will be
But I
perpendicular
do
to
need
the building.
signs. I still do have people that will come to the inn and say, I know you guys are a restaurant. The place is 214 years old. That's, I don't understand that, but if people are coming and saying they don't know it's a restaurant, then that's a problem.
But I'll bet George Washington didn't sleep there.
Probably not. Probably not.
Check the records. Check the signing books.
Can we see the view from the Grafton Commons of?
Let me just.
No.
Yeah, my concern is there any obstruction, like if it's even though it's a free turn for going right or left.
The
If it's
crosswalk sign would be more risky.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
this
is
is
the
a-
funny thing so you're talking about it would be,
This
let me
view.
just shift over a little bit. So it would be right here. Now,
I'm sorry, Joe.
Google
What do you mean?
Maps is funny in that if I shift over a tiny bit, we then move forward years. So now you can see now we're existing. It's right here.
Okay. And
So so it would be perpendicular to this face, pointing out.
And
And
few feet.
as Jay said, this crosswalk sign is liable to get you in the head
More so.
sooner than
We are
Yeah.
way above the crosswalk sign. I would say a good foot above the crosswalk sign.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy.
I
That's
have questions.
the
also.
front,
Okay.
the front corner, correct?
Once he's done.
Because there are no signs by the rear corner.
So we are looking the view. We are looking at the view from Grafton Commons. So one, if we add another, what is this? 3x5 sign out there. Can you?
Yes,
you do-
15 square. Less than 15.
Yeah, so I mean, technically, the sign guy has it as 55 inches by 36, so it ends up being under 15, about
Yeah, like 14.75 or something. I forget what it is.
13.75.
Same size as the
Okay,
other
thank
side.
you.
Right, and that's my whole point here. So
Yeah,
give me 1 second. Just trying to get a picture there.
so I mean that's where I don't have SketchUp.
That's okay. So my point is here, if this sign is to give some indication to the people driving in from, away from Grafton Commons, they see the big other one, the Grafton Inn sign. They probably are not looking at this display of Hunter's Grill there on the left. If they are coming in from the other direction towards Grafton Common, I bet they are first looking at the crosswalk sign and not the Hunter Grill sign. And if they have to see that, they are seeing it before they come into this crosswalk.
So if you're coming from Upton into the
Right.
Common, yes, you will see this one first.
First, and that
However, one of the main things is that while this for coming from Upton is a secondary sign, this is going to be pretty visible from a lot of the corners coming in. I think one of the hard things, and I think this is ultimately why the historic district commission approved it, is that to put it on the front facade then changes the look and feel of this, because I mean, literally, he could come across and put in multiple signs across the top, do other changes that then throw off, say, the historic character. So this sign coming in off the side, it's less obtrusive. It maintains the historical context of the building. And
Right.
it at least
Right.
indicates that it is there for people who are just coming through the center.
Yeah.
Coming down,
Right.
going on North Street. At least it's something.
Right.
Oh.
Can it not be on the, sorry, Bob, one. So on the edge, on the corner where the two walls meet?
Facing
On
out
that corner?
this way?
No. Right now it is perpendicular to the wall. I'm saying diagonal to the wall, away. That way you see the sign. Well, I'm saying
coming out of the corner?
coming out of the corner. It is still going to be 8 feet, 9 feet up from the ground, higher up from the ground. What it feels is when it's right next to the sidewalk, and Mr. Hunter, I don't know if you can visualize this. It looks very crowded with the crosswalk sign out there, and it feels like, to me, if I were driving in, I would look at the crosswalk sign and I would pay attention to that. Okay, and then I would be looking down and seeing are there anyone crossing the street or not, then rather look at the sign up. If the intention is to draw attention, and I think you should draw attention to the fact that there is a good restaurant out there, then you may want to place it in a different location. Right next to that, there is where the two walls meet on the corner, and have it diagonally project out. Probably an option that you may want to present. That's my opinion.
I think of the people who are on the common also. We look for a fair amount of foot traffic there. I think you're probably more likely to see the front sign when you're coming from Upton, because you're more likely to be stopped right at the
Or slow
at the
down.
crosswalk. And also in terms of turning, we turn down that road all the time and head towards Upton. I think there's at least a 50-50 chance that I'm gonna see the one on the corner. By the time I get down to the back end, I'm busy worrying about the railroad crossing and all of that, and starting to look, I'm accelerating and starting to look down the road more, so.
And to expand from that for myself too is, this is not gonna be something that the driver will always notice, especially when you're having to focus your attention on driving conditions. Mm-hmm. It's something a passenger would notice very well, especially when you slow down to a crosswalk and a turn. Even though there's no stop sign at that intersection heading from Upton, it's something a passenger would see.
No,
And also, I
So-
mean, one of the things, and Jay, if you can comment, the Historic District Commission also was looking specifically at placement, correct?
Yes.
So their approval is for the location that then we have in our packet. Any other change in the locations would
Exactly.
require going back to the Historic District Commission.
yeah.
Exactly. So, to Joe's point, coming around that corner on 140, people. Now, I've been there almost 3.5 years, three and a half plus, almost 4 years. People don't slow down. They don't look. They don't watch. They don't care. The two signs are going to make a huge difference for me as a business owner to attract more business to Grafton, because coming from south 140, they're going to see two signs. Coming north 140, they're going to see two signs. And also coming from South Street and North Street, they're going to see a sign. So that whole intersection is really vital to my visibility. The signs don't encumber the crosswalk, or I'm sorry, sidewalk, or the crosswalk, the sidewalk. What I'm asking for is just to help being a business owner and more visibility in town, bring in more economic development into the town. I mean, I'm not sure.
I don't think we're disagreeing.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if
Yeah. Let's just remind ourselves that that the question before the board is whether to allow a 13.75 square foot sign where the bylaw permits only a 6 square foot sign.
Says 6 feet. Right.
And if we can, yeah, and
Right,
we
but
all have
that
our ideas about
13.75
maybe where we'd like to see that sign, but really that's not before the board. Is the placement of the sign is not the issue.
The thing that helped me get to being ready to vote on this was the approval of the Historic District Commission, because they're always very careful about everything, and particularly about signs in where the district is, or around the common, all the buildings around the common. And that makes the difference for me, where, I think it's okay.
They were out there for almost an hour, surveying the site, looking at materials. I had John Lyons out there. He's my sign maker, Lyons Signs out of Worcester on Grafton Street. We went over everything, and they did approve it. They had some trepidation as far as the wooden sign as opposed to aluminum. John told them, look, wooden is going to warp it. It's going to look like it's going to look good in 2 years, 3, 4, 5, whatever. The aluminum is going to look like wood. It's going to last forever.
Yeah, this is
You know,
yeah,
I'm not
it
looking to
is-
put neon signs in my window. I'm not looking to do anything. I just want 2 total 30 square foot signs
Yeah.
on the
Okay,
side of the road
yeah, I'd like to get this
for redundancy.
try to wrap this up. This is a public hearing. If there is anybody from the public here who would care to speak on it, and I do see a hand raised in the audience, so we'll give the
Knows how
public
the
a
drone
chance.
works here.
Hi, this is Rich Whitney from 13 Greeny Drive. I see no problem with this. The only thing I ask is, to Mr. J, is this gonna be lit at night? And if so, how do you tend to dim it to a point where it's not affecting the traffic flow at that corner? Other than that, I don't see there's a problem with the size of the signs, because when growing up, we used to have 2 signs up there, and we used to have the sidewalk, and we'd have, what do you call it, banisters and walkways in the front, and we'd go there for Boy Scouts
Right.
and stuff to get everything. But my main concern is there gonna be lighting? That's all. Other than that, I think the
Yeah.
board should pass this, no problem.
I will not have lighting. The only thing I will have, so the front sign will not be lit. I'm sorry. Neither sign will be lit. There's no neon, there's no internal lighting, there's nothing. And we've always had a lantern or an external light, sconce, whatever you want to call it, in the back rear by the parking lot. That's going to be changed to a more, and I've changed all the lighting on the exterior except for that one light, but that'll be changed just to showcase the sign, basically to illuminate the sign. But it is a lantern, like a post lamp, whatever you want to call it. But I have no intentions of putting, neon in the windows or illuminating anything. I want this to be very tasteful. I want to blend in with the common.
Okay. Any other questions from the board or any comments? Anything else from the public?
Move we close the hearing and direct staff to prepare a draft decision, taking into account all of the information we have gathered.
Second.
Moved and seconded that this hearing be closed and that staff begin work on drafting a decision. Thank you very much, Jay, for your participation. Hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Florida, and we should have hopefully a decision prepared for the board to vote on in 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you, board. I appreciate it. Thank you for making my accommodations tonight. I appreciate it.
All in favor of closing the hearing? Aye. Opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously. This hearing is closed. And now we have another work item for staff.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Jay.
Alrighty, so let's get back to the regular order of hearings.
Yep.
Our first, for the first hearing on our agenda was the request for special permit and site plan approval at 98 Worcester Street for the Grafton Water District. We have received a written request from the applicant to continue this hearing. I suppose we should formally open the hearing with a reading of the legal notice and then act on the applicant's request.
Agreed. So pursuant to section 1.5.5 and 1.3.3 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaw, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, September 23rd, 2019, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A at the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider the application for a special permit and site plan approval for the construction of a new pump station and associated site work at 98 Worcester Street, shown as Grafton Assessors Map 46, Lot 50A. Said property is located in a low-density residential 40 zoning district. Grafton Water District is the applicant and owner. Copies of the application are available for public inspection at the Planning Department Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., or on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov at the Planning Department Development Projects webpage.
What, did they tell us why they want to continue?
Yes, they are requesting continuance to October 7th, as Graves Engineering is peer reviewing the
yes.
material and will not be able to issue a review by the 23rd.
I move we grant the applicant's written request to continue the hearing until October 7th.
And
Third.
this is a project that is going concurrently through planning and conservation, and Graves is doing the review for both. So that's why it's taking a little bit longer, because they had a subsequent submittal with conservation. We're wrapping it all together.
Yeah, it's direct proximity tax.
Yep.
Yep.
And I'll second the motion.
All right, moved and seconded that the board grant the applicant's request to continue to October 7th. Discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Declare that motion carried unanimously. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is the continuation of the request for special permit site plan approval at 84 Snow Road Rear and 23 Side Greeny Drive. For this one, we are in receipt of a request from the applicant to withdraw the application. And so
And he
Without
asks,
prejudice.
without prejudice.
without prejudice. And Joe, maybe you want to just, we communicated a little bit, but the implications of without prejudice versus not without prejudice.
Right. So without prejudice basically means that if an applicant was to resubmit the exact same application, that the application could proceed with the hearing process. With prejudice would mean if that application was the same when it was submitted, the board could deny it and the applicant would have to wait 2 years or make substantial changes that the board signs off on to then resubmit. And for the board to act on that application. So that ends up being the distinction between both. In communicating with town council was the opinion that if the application was withdrawn with prejudice, that because of federal telecommunication laws, that if the application was to come forward where there was a lapse in service, that basically that with prejudice could be overcome fairly easily by attorney making an argument. Because counsel was not going to be in attendance, also because counsel for Crown Castle was not going to be in attendance, counsel had recommended that the planning board consider granting the applicant's request.
I think the same issues are going to be there if he comes back under any circumstances. So I'd move to grant the applicant's request to withdraw without prejudice.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the board grant the applicant's request to withdraw this application without prejudice. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Declare it motion carried unanimously. Next, see, we already took up item C, so we are left with the request for modification of special permit site plan approval at 44 Estabrook Avenue. And very similarly, following immediately on this one, we have a similar request for 43 Estabrook Avenue. And did we decide at the beginning of the meeting that we would,
Yeah, to me, it makes sense to take them both at once.
read this, so
Sure, I'll read both.
read both legal notices and then
Certainly.
we'll deal
So,
with the two requests.
The first notice, pursuant to section 1.5.7 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaws, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, July 23rd, 2018, it says in these public notices. 2019 is what we meant, commencing at the 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A at the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, to consider the application for a special permit and site plan approval for construction of a solar energy generating facility up to approximately 2.9 megawatts on the property located at 44 Estabrook Avenue, shown as Grafton Assessors Map 49, Lot 6. Said property is located in the residential R40 zoning district. The applicant is Blue Wave Capital, BWC Lake Ripple, LLC, and the owner is Patricia K. Knowlton, trustee, Knowlton Farms Nominee Trust. Copies of the plan are available for public inspection at the planning department Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30.
Yeah, you know what?
Could these be the, yeah,
What is the date, the hearing dates from those
yeah,
notices
these are
you're
the
reading?
old previous hearing sheets, I think, because this is July 23rd, 2018.
Yes, I'm looking at the hearing notice for this.
Yeah, I should pull them up this way.
Yeah, because this hearing notice is one notice for both properties. Yes, those paper copies are
Okay.
for different hearings.
Go to the project page.
Yeah,
and
I got it up. I just,
Okay.
Okay, I'll read the one on the computer, which is accurate. There we go. So the Grafton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, September 23rd, 2019, commencing at 7:30 p.m. in Conference Room A at the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center, 30 Providence Road, Grafton, Mass, to consider the two applications as follows. Application for modification of a special permit and site plan approval for a one-year extension of an approval with conditions granted on August 27th, 2018 on property located at 43 Estabrook Avenue, as shown on the Grafton Assessors Map 49, Lot 1, and application for modification of a special permit and site plan approval for a one-year extension of an approval with conditions granted on August 27, 2018, and to add gravel drive, animal shelter, concrete pad, fenced-in padlock, and battery storage within the fenced-in array on the property located at 44 Estabrook Avenue, as shown on Grafton Assessors Map 49, Lot 6. Both properties are located in a low-density residential zoning district. The applicant for 43 Estabrook is Estabrook Valley LLC, and the applicant for 44 Estabrook is BWC Lake Ripple LLC. The owner for both properties is Patricia K. Knowlton, trustee, Knowlton Farms Nominee Trust. Copies of the plan are available at the planning department Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, or on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov at the Planning Department Development Projects webpage.
Okay, so I'm observing here that for both projects, the applicant is requesting a one-year extension. For one of the projects, in addition to the one-year extension, there are also some changes in the design.
Yes.
Any points of discussion on the one-year extension for either one of those?
I think probably the applicant would be able to just summarize exactly why the 1 year, and then we could dispense of one and then focus in on 44.
I am Drew Pearson.
If you can come to the,
You need to use a
Perfect.
Your choice of which microphone to use.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm Drew Pearson, Senior Director of Development at Blue Wave, representing the applicant, both Estabrook Valley and PwC Lake Ripple LLC. Yeah, we're requesting the extension because our construction timeline has extended due to utility studies and utility delays. There's a large regional study occurring across all of Massachusetts that's driven by the ISO New England Regional Power Authority, looking at the interconnection of all the solar currently in the queue. So until that study is done, presumably in a couple months, we're we have our construction on hold until we learn the results. But we'll be building hopefully through the first quarter of next year. So
Interconnection of all the solar?
yeah.
Most power just connects through the grid, I'm not sure what does interconnection of the solar mean? Separate wires?
Sure, yeah. It's hundreds of other projects just like ours that
Right.
are connecting to the grid within a short enough time frame that the utility and the regional power authority needed to tap the brakes to figure out what grid upgrades beyond an individual project might be required to kind of orchestrate.
Yeah, so this is really
this
looking
change.
looking at the impact of all of the projects collectively on the grid.
Yep.
You know, because potentially some decisions about particular grid upgrades would be different depending on how many solar projects are connecting in at various points.
Potentially, yeah. We and in this vein, we've, for example, paid 100% of our interconnection upgrade costs to the utility, but because there could be some of these additional improvements, there might be more money out of our pocket. We're not really sure, and dozens of other developers are in the same position due to the far-reaching nature of the study.
The delay, it kind of interests me, perhaps you're aware that we just approved and they just started working on a good-sized solar facility about less than 2 miles south on George Hill Road. They told us that at least the program that they were involved with required them to be basically done by the end of this year. How does that,
Yeah.
you're now spilling over, and just interested in what's
Sure.
going on.
Yeah, there are multiple, you could call them programs or incentives that drive the economics or time frame of a given project. And I suspect, I don't want to put any words in their mouth, that they could have been referring to a federal tax credit that changes in value at the end of the year in a significant enough of a way that it could have made a difference to that individual project.
Yeah, I know they're doing everything they can to get done on that site.
Yeah, I think there were, that project was a little bit of an unusual nature, and I think there were maybe multiple factors that affected their timing.
Yeah.
But,
Well, three of us are on George Hill Road.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
yes, it's
There's three.
that this particular project is on, just down the road from their house and my house.
Oh, I see.
I'm less than,
And
Maybe
really not
3/4
far
of
from
a
You're in
mile.
walking distance, not my walking distance.
yeah. Anyway, that sort of side thing is, but as far as it affects you, that, this is basically your position is that, you don't want to move forward, maybe you can't move forward until you have a better picture of what the overall grid changes are going to be in the area.
We have a high degree of confidence that we will be moving forward, but I think as just prudent stewards of our financial resources, we want to just do so knowing kind of the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
So
That, the George Hill Road project brought in an element that I don't think we've seen in any of the other Grafton projects, which was some on-site storage,
Yep.
batteries.
Yep.
To, I guess, well, I understand, smooth out. You don't, I don't recall if there's anything like that in these Estabrook projects.
Well, funny
That's
thing,
one of.
that will come up shortly in the discussion.
All right.
Outside the boundaries of the time extension. Because one of these two projects is, as I read the notice, proposing some battery storage
that's
to
correct.
be added,
That's correct.
so that we can get to that.
Yeah, we're proposing to add a pad for the option of installing it.
On which one?
44.
44. So, on the topic of the time extension, any other questions or comments from the board?
No, and that's where if, the board just sort of make a motion about 43, get that aside, then
Yeah, because the
we can
time,
focus then on 44.
right, the time extension is the only issue under discussion for 43 Estabrook Road.
Yes.
So I think it would be in order to move that,
I move that we grant the applicant's request for a time extension for the 43 Estabrook Road, I think it is, project until, for a year from,
A year from whatever the date was,
from, well,
right?
for a year.
A 1-year extension.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the board grant the requested 1-year extension for the 43 Estabrook Road project.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now on to the perhaps somewhat more interesting nature of the additions and changes that are being proposed for 44 Estabrook.
So, to continue what I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, originally the request was for the board to make a minor determination of the following change, which is basically, as long as this, come in here, proposed concrete equipment with inverter and proposed concrete battery storage.
Okay.
This was the first thing that these gentlemen had come in, submitted a request for us to make a minor determination that this was essentially in keeping with the decision and to approve as a minor modification. There was one other element within the request, and I'm just going to show you this. This has been determined by the building inspector to not be associated with the solar and be associated with the agricultural use. And this was, and let me just draw this in. Access road coming down here to a paddock, shed, sorry, a paddock. That's my, let's start this over. A paddock right here, and then a shelter structure for the animals and just a shed. In talking things over with the building inspector, this was tied to the use, and this was a dual use facility where the animals were going to be basically grazing underneath. Interestingly, when we were reviewing this, it didn't really come up like, okay, when you're maintaining, where do the animals go? This paddock allows them to be herded, collected into that area if there is any sort of work that needs to be done, or if there are animals they need to take a look at. Has some storage for farm equipment, same thing, a shelter for the animals. So the building inspector identified that this change to the site was really agricultural in nature, and while it's on the same site as that, it is outside of what was the previously approved fence for the solar area, and really wasn't part of the site plan and special permit application. The other item was the minor modification. To cover our bases, I drafted the legal notice as in case the board wanted to say, we view it all as part of this and wanted to discuss it. So the board has basically 3 choices. 1, to address as a minor modification the battery storage. 2, incorporate that into the 1-year extension and modify the special permit. And then 3, if you want to view this part as within that as well, you can just group everything together within that modification. So it's advertised in the most conservative way, meaning the most work for me to draft a decision. And that way we're not continuing hearings in order to say, well, we really needed that legal notice to address this element.
I missed the batteries because I got lost somewhere in gravel drive and shelter, and I didn't get all the way to batteries.
I was trying to figure out why in a solar field you needed a shelter for an animal.
So the paddock is fenced basically all the way around, isolating both from the world and from the solar.
Yep.
Correct.
And there's a gate there somehow, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see any need to worry about minor modification because we're here with a full special permit, process. I'm happy. Is there any comment from the public?
Yeah,
Just out of curiosity though, is it typical for animals to be there at a solar facility?
It's not conventional, but it has been done, and it is an increasingly popular way to manage land under solar panels. There are projects up in Vermont that host large, cows and forms of livestock, and there are actually large developers in the southeast in Georgia that are similarly doing rotational grazing with cattle directly underneath solar arrays.
Yeah, that was a significant part of looking at this project. Seems to me that, that there's an advantage to having it. Maybe it's not taking the land out of agriculture entirely.
The Knowlton farm is a very old farm. It has been in the Knowlton families since really a couple of 100 years.
I thought that the Knowltons originally were over where, well, Tufts now, but the state hospital were.
Yeah, but it's still
They
an
were
old family, old
somewhere
farming
around the
family.
turn of the last century. The state took that and they
Yeah,
moved
dump
it
them out of there.
onto the hills, because that was a little bit flatter farmable land.
It's a road you probably haven't been on very much, and if you go on it, I recommend not going on when school buses are on it, because you might find yourself driving into the trees, because it's really narrow.
It's approximately the width of a school bus.
Yeah. It's a very narrow, it's really, the Knowltons are the only people who live on most of it.
On the
Very-
Adams Road end, there's several homes.
Yeah, there are a couple of houses down at that end, but most of it's just the Knowltons.
Yep, and this project was originally designed as a dual use.
Yes.
So what we're talking about here is just adding the paddock as, I think the way Joe made it kind of sound like, well, that's something that really should have been thought of earlier.
Yeah.
It just basically,
What do you do with the
it
animals?
facilitates the
Yeah.
dual use aspect of this.
Yeah, I think part of this is the result of it being sort of a new approach and process. So to recount kind of, the time since we got initially approved by this board, we then applied for our qualification under the state program, and it was through that separate peer review process. We've hired a NRCS certified farm planner to kind of look at this holistically, and so together with him and the landowner and the state, we've all sat down and agreed that this is
So this is not gonna be milk, this is gonna be meat?
yes, yeah, they're raising yearlings. I think starting out with approximately 8 heads or so of animals, and yeah, the expectation is that every year they'll be selling that meat locally, or those cows.
Because you'd have more infrastructure if it was milk.
Correct.
I had a friend who did milk for quite a while.
I think we should drop the agriculture out of the whole thing. I don't think that's really our problem.
Yeah, it's a change in the plan, Bob. If they are gonna do it, we have to say it's okay to add it to the plan.
Bob views it as a separate agricultural use, and that's a by right use. So it's really he didn't view that as necessary. I included it in the legal ad in case the board had a difference of opinion.
I don't mind approving it, and I wouldn't mind going home, so.
Yes. Yeah, so is it the board's desire to approve this as a minor modification
Well,
as opposed to,
With the 1 year, we have to do it a full blown. So it
Okay.
becomes a question. I mean, it's not significantly more work to include the other 2 items as shown on this plan. It's just a question whether or not the board want to do 2 separate things or just grab everything together in just one decision.
so,
I don't see why it's minor, it's just a special permit,
yeah, so just-
modification.
right, a modification. So
And-
this would be a new decision.
All right, if you're ready, I'll move to close the public hearing and direct staff to prepare a draft decision, taking into consideration all of the information we've gathered on all of the aspects.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that the public hearing be closed, staff be directed to draft a decision, And this, yeah, we have a decision on the other one as well, correct?
Correct. I mean, just
For the time
just
extension.
for expeditiousness or curiosity on my side, is there anything that any sort of time frame that if this was finalized the end of October, that presents a issue for you all?
No, it does not. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
be fine.
Yeah.
My motion.
Meaning that the permit, the revised permit would be issued?
That
or-
the decision be approved at the board's October 28th meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I perhaps misinterpreted. I guess, is there a particular outstanding item
so,
that would need to be addressed?
No, it's just staff managing time and drafting decision. Is there a time deadline that you need the decision filed with the town clerk within the next couple of weeks, that then I have to bump this to the October 7th meeting? Or if there isn't anything, then I propose just having the board vote on the final decision October 28th.
One other possibility, Joe. The board could hold a brief meeting prior to the town meeting on October 21st, if
I
necessary.
think you had a pen drop next to you.
No.
If yeah, I think your question, Joe, is, yeah, if
I mean, the main thing is for October 7th, I can try. We have other decisions that have a legal clock that I need to be very cognizant of.
Sure.
And that may mean that for the October 7th, I may not have the decision completed in time.
I see.
Doesn't mean it's not going to
Yeah,
yeah, there's no
go
problem.
your way. It
it-
just means I may not have it done.
that's fine. And then maybe just a question to clarify. So if there were a vote today, does that imply then that there's a limited time frame in which to write the decision?
65 days.
Oh, it's 60. Okay.
I try to do it in 2 weeks. I'm
Okay.
just saying that I may not be able to get it done in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think the only thing at issue here is staff resources to draft a decision for the board to review and vote on. And our next two regular meetings are October 7th and October 28th. You know, we have an unusual scheduling,
October
we have a
stuff.
3-week gap
I
between
s-
meetings in
I see.
October.
And is it the board's preference that you would prefer, or preference you prefer, a little redundant, to review that draft decision before
board-
issuing a vote?
The
Yeah.
board has to, yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
That's the way we do it.
I see.
yeah, the
Okay.
board has to meet and vote on the decision.
He drafts it all, we go through and
Okay.
approve it line by line, more or less.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yes, and this, as decisions go, this is a relatively straightforward one for staff to draft. It's just a question of whether the staff
Yeah.
resources, whether the time is available in the office.
Yeah.
With all the other things that they do.
No, it's completely appreciated and just helps to kind of clarify my messaging to
I
the rest of the team.
don't think there's any issue, and it sounds like, unlike the project down at the other end of the road, you don't have to have your approval real soon.
Yeah, I mean, we are in the SMART program. We're proceeding. It's just more of a matter of kind of clarity for pre-construction planning. But it's fine, as you know, we're still waiting on the utility. So
Yep, so as it stands, the most likely course of events will be for the board to vote and vote to approve to issue the decision on October 28th.
okay,
It would be filed with town clerk presumably the very next day.
Yep.
And there's a 20-day appeal period after
Right.
that.
I may be done before then. If case it would be on the agenda, you know. I'm just trying to ask questions so that I know how much hair I'll have left at the end of this month. So.
no, see, well, yeah, I'm happy. I mean, happy to be
So I guess,
flexible.
right, I guess sort of Joe's original question basically was, if we were to issue the decision on the 28th, would that be a problem for you? Would you need to have it issued sooner? And the answer, I think, is
It would
no.
not be. So yeah, we can
So-
work with you on that.
If a small miracle occurs and Joe is able to get this written up in time for us to process on the 7th, so much
Sure.
the better.
Okay, well, very much appreciated, Stephen, the question. So thanks for considering it.
So did we vote?
Did we take our vote?
Did we? I think there's a motion on the floor, and I don't think we actually voted on it.
Okay.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Declared motion carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see, we're almost done
Staff
with our
report.
agenda. We have a staff report on the list of things to be done.
I really don't have much of a staff report. Since our last meeting, as you all know, I was for family reasons last week, and today was basically construction management and trying to get to the bottom of. I have been given a heads up as far as some activity on Facebook postings. So by the time I found out what was going on, went out to the site and identified, okay, stuff is going on that was not authorized. Also over the weekend, I had received from the same developer an email forwarding plans, layout plans, as-built plans for initiating the determination completeness process for High Point as well. Because the plans and layout plans were exactly the same plans I and Jeff Walsh had reviewed back in 2018 and already determined were incomplete, I had to fully document all of those exhibits that were submitted and prepare essentially a 20-page packet, including all the correspondences that had previously been issued on why it is not a complete submission. That's what I've been up to today as I'm trying to catch up with things.
You were doing that on behalf of the ZBA?
Correct. So for all 40Bs outside of condos, let me back up. 40Bs that result in the roadway being accepted by the town. Essentially, what I'm doing is acting as I would for the planning board, but for the zoning board of appeals. I know the determination of completeness process. I know the process for working with Graves to go through final inspections and all those things. So for the ZBA for High Point, as well as for now Elm Rock, which is under construction, I had been assisting the ZBA specifically with High Point on trying to assist not only the developer but the ZBA understand what that process looks like. I had previously in April, and you may have recalled seeing those memos in April, identifying a very lengthy time period of meetings with the developer as well as communications regarding the status of the development as it related to acceptance of the roadway. There definitely is either some sort of misunderstanding on behalf of the engineer or the developer, or both, as far as what that process is and the documents that are needed, even though I gave an example packet from Brook Meadow, which was, as you recall, Gary and Helen had put together a packet, basically identified exactly what was necessary. Because the request from High Point had also requested to be a meeting to be set up with the Board of Selectmen for street acceptance at the fall town meeting. I had to notify them as soon as possible that no, you are not on the warrant, and that as stated in past correspondences and communications, you have to first go through that determination of completeness. With the 40B, it's the exact same process as with the planning board, except for the ZBA is acting as the planning board would. The other side of it is that they also do have the comprehensive permit that they still have to enforce and make sure that they sign off on that. That made the issue as far as what came on Facebook a little bit more interesting because of the fact that that project is currently in court. They had appealed the building inspector's stop work order. I did reach out to the property owner who had expressed dissatisfaction for multiple people as it relates to that development. To reiterate that any sort of activity, especially if it's happening on weekends, I try to go out to all the subdivisions once a week or at least once every 2 weeks just to keep track of things. Anything that's going on in the woods, that sometimes is hard for us to observe. So at least it was good to find out what had gone on. Because in this instance, what had happened was that there was ramps that were built of stone and riprap that was to access open space. Any work that was supposed to be done at this moment was supposed to be first put in plans to be reviewed by the peer consultant and signed off and authorization given to do that work. That did not happen in this instance. Drainage pipe was put in under one of these ramps. A drainage pipe to nowhere. It probably would serve mice and rodents as a tunnel underneath the ramp and water, because you can't put a pipe up here and have the grade continue down here. Water is just coming around the other side. So, so I did relay that it wasn't drainage related, but because it was for access to the open space, I myself walking on this riprap, my feet were sort of shuffling on that riprap, and it is not safe. It is not in compliance with any sort of detail. So I am in communication with council, with zoning board, officers as far as taking that next step, as far as what to do, as far as enforcement and all that stuff. So, so that's my staff report.
As you know, I go all the way back to the beginning of this. Back
Are you
when
saying
they
it's
had.
your fault? Are you saying it's your fault?
I'm gonna tell you. Maybe. I think we actually went maybe through 2 cycles of subdivision convention, regular subdivision. During the second subdivision process or the last subdivision project before us, during it, they filed and started a 40B at the same time on the property. And eventually they walked away from the regular subdivision and went with that. The ZBA finally approved 50-some homes, and they appealed to the state, and the state gave them 70-some
Right.
homes. The state, there's a lot, you could go back and see about how the state handles these things.
This is High Point area?
This is High Point. I remember people talking about, well, the state came out to have their hearing about the appeal, and one commissioner showed up and he slept through the meeting, because it's the foreground conclusion. Doesn't matter what we say. Boston is going to approve it anyway. So you might guess I do not favor 40Bs that aren't friendly, so-called friendly cooperative 40Bs out this way. Maybe they make sense somewhere else, but not here. The other thing, though, is that the way I understand, see, I went to the ZBA meetings during the hearings for the 40B and tried to communicate with them, tried to get them to include planning department oversight and so on. And that was a new concept back then, so I'm interested that Joe is pretty much fully on it the way he would be for us, and that he's following the same rules that we would follow. The way the law works, as I get it, is that the ZBA has the power to issue anything that ordinarily we would do, or to make up, to override anything. And they overrode zoning, length of cul-de-sac or dead end, all that sort of thing. Why they can't override road acceptance rules or the road completeness determination rules, I don't know. I do believe, though, as far as I know, that 40B doesn't say the town meeting has to approve the acceptance of the roads.
Correct.
And, I know that some of the residents up there sort of wonder what would happen if town meeting did, but we've had the case where town meeting did not approve a road. That was a temporary situation until some issues got taken care of.
But would it be the select board have to approve it still?
They have to lay out.
It's the exact same thing. They have to lay out the road, so they'd have a layout hearing. But quite honestly, unless they did it as a citizen's petition without the support of the ZBA or Board of Selectmen, it would be fall flat at town meeting anyways. You know, and I think that there'd be ample opportunity for anyone concerned about the status of the road to attend those meetings to voice it and express it. Because you are correct in that acceptance is not tied to 40B at all. There is no, you know, there's no assumed grant of acceptance associated with the comprehensive permit.
Is the, I go by there all the time. I don't recall seeing the required, or we require private way on the street sign until it becomes a public way. I don't believe I saw that out
No.
there, and I think it should be there. That, among other things, puts property owners on notice.
Alrighty, that's it for staff
Yep.
report. Anything of note in correspondence that we
No.
need to talk about?
No,
Any reports from planning board representatives and town committees and CMRPC that we need to be aware of?
I didn't go for the library meeting today, library building meeting. I had one question on 7 when you come to that agenda.
Alrighty. Are there any other items which may lawfully come before the board?
I don't know what context it can be framed, but I have received feedback from multiple users of Route 30 coming out from the station about how the situation.
or the roadway is.
Yeah. It seems to be a stripped down version of a roadway. And
Yeah.
should we table it here or?
Selectmen.
Right, so I'll let you know that myself, Tim, Paul Canoy are already dealing with this. The contractor that is doing the work on behalf of Afonso, we had a meeting about a week and a half ago. We also have National Grid that is still doing work in and out. We are aware of the condition of the road and are working to get both contractors to fix it.
You can let people know who do come to you with that, though, that when they talk about the roads, it's really goes to the selectmen. That's who they need to complain to.
Well-
Selectmen and Tim.
If they're
Joe.
public ways, well, once they get out of the subdivision process, the selectmen own. Town owns it.
It's all their problem.
That's all I have.
Okay. There's no need to vote to extend the duration of the meeting beyond 10 PM unless someone really wants to talk
We
about
can stay
something.
on camera, play poker? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried unanimously. We are done.